back, Salt community. Welcome to the Monochrome Podcast. My name is JT. I'm the marketing manager here at Salt, and we are so excited that you're here. I'm joined with the Salt founder himself, Luke McElroy.
What's going on? Hey, JT.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well, dude.
Good. Glad to hear it. We're excited. This is the first of our podcast recordings for the day, so we're pumped. We're energized. But if this is your first time joining us for the Monochrome Podcast, first, welcome. We're so glad you're here. We're really focused on serving production and creatives in the local church and providing you with not all the answers, but just with ideas, questions, contemplations, hot takes, those sorts of things. And so our goal is just to provide some value in a short amount of time on your commute, or maybe you're working right now, whatever you're doing that you're listening or watching this. So that's our hope. And so we're excited. Today we're going to be hearing from Natalie Runion, who is incredible. If you don't know who she is, she's an author. We'll let Luke, or I'll explain more about her in a little bit. But then next week, we don't want you to miss next week. We're going to be hearing from the Salt worship team from 2024, Marianne, Lauren, Terrell, and Kier. They're incredible people, incredible worship leaders, and kind of will give you a backstory on what they do and a little bit behind the scenes look of what it's like at Salt. So we're excited about that. But to kick things off, we're going to start off with a book that Luke and I have both discovered that we love. It's called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. So basically it goes over 21 laws of leadership. I can't explain all 21 in the short amount of time we have, but I wanted to pick two. So the two I've picked are the law of the lid and the law of addition. So the main things about these laws is leadership, law of the lid, leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Basically what that means is your leadership ability is the lid on your potential. So this really spoke to me because I'm always thinking like I need to get more skilled in different areas, and that's important and helpful. But you can be the most highly skilled person ever, but if you can't lead and you don't know how to lead and you're not growing in that capacity, you'll always be limited by your leadership ability and not your skill. It also talks in that chapter, he talks about how you're not necessarily a leader just because you've been placed there. It's important to lead from whatever capacity you're in. So I feel like that speaks to a lot of people because whether you're a church creative or production, you're typically not the executive pastor. The executive pastor is normally not also producing on Sunday morning, and at least I hope not.
We hope not.
Yeah. So it's important to recognize like you can lead from whatever position you're in. So that's one thing. It kind of has I'll give you some kind of ways that you can increase your lid. I encourage you to go read this book, but the 3 ways you can increase is invest in leadership training. Great way to do that is come to Salt, shameless plug. Read a book, mentor someone, do those sorts of things to increase your lid. Let go of control and empower a team member. A lot of us have volunteers that serve under us, and so helping them run Sunday or an event or something like that, and host short debriefs to get coaching and feedback either from your supervisor or to others. So Luke,
let me jump in real quick, JT, because
Yeah.
when you mentioned this the other day in our planning, fun fact for those listening, we do these kind of like pitch meetings where we say, hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. And I told JT, I was like, oh my gosh, I have not thought about this book in so long. Thank you for bringing it up. I started reading it again, which I'm now committed that I'm going to like read this whole book because it is gold. So plug for John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. But no, on the law of the lid, this is a concept I actually bring up a lot, JT, with friends of mine. I've even brought it up on our team as we're doing sort of one-on-ones and coaching. He really calls it out that like, if you put on your spectrum 1 to 10, your leadership level, let's say you think you're at like a 6 or a 7, and you made a great point. It doesn't matter if you're the senior leader or not. Now, from my perspective, sometimes I think about like, overall organizational success is not going to succeed my ability to lead this organization, if that makes sense, as kind of the top person. But he talks about if you're at like a 6 on your leadership scale, then the success of your team, your organization, your projects won't ever exceed 5. You got to take one off, and that's basically the most success you'll get. And he talks about so many people. He also talked a little bit about, I think, if I'm not mistaken, in this chapter, maybe it was a different chapter, he talks about like popularity is not leadership. But you've got to have the capacity to help lead an organization. And so growth is a big thing, right? And it's how do you on a daily basis, on a regular basis, go to conferences? How do you do online training? How do you read new books? How do you expand your knowledge so that you have the ability? And he tells the story of McDonald's, which is pretty gold. A lot of people don't know it, but like the two brothers that founded McDonald's figured out how to make fast food, but Ray Kroc figured out how to scale the business and make it into the behemoth, organization with 30,000 locations now. So I love it. I think no matter what, it's just the idea of like, you can grow yourself, and as you grow yourself, that's going to help you be more successful in whatever project, whatever environment, whatever team you're trying to lead or sort of be in. So.
Yeah. And that can be hard too. Like I've found, because especially if you're a doer, you find yourself really busy all the time with tasks and like getting those done. And so you kind of have to almost, like the analogy or whatever, where you have like a bunch of rocks and then you like fill it with sand. You have to almost find those cracks in between the big projects to, for me, audiobooks all the time are ways that I do that. But then sometimes you got to find the big rock, like going to a conference or, buying a course or something like that, or really investing time with a mentor to help you grow in those ways. So that's... Well,
and if you think about it, there's a team member on my team that used to always use that famous line, like, insanity is defined by doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results.
Right.
And so I would say to the person listening or watching this right now, like if you are finding yourself just doing the same thing over and over, and you're like, I don't know why I'm not leading more. I don't know why we're not getting more done. I don't know why I'm not getting everything done in the week that I need to. My family's suffering, my job is suffering, or Sunday is suffering, whatever. That's insanity. What have you changed? How have you grown your capacity so that you can get things done in a more efficient, effective? So.
Yeah. Thanks for calling all the listeners insane. That's going to be great for metrics. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I love it. It's good. Okay, so second law I wanted to quickly talk about is the law of addition. I feel like for me personally, this one has been, as I was reading it, I was like, oh man, this is something like I have felt and like believed in, but not really had good words for. And it's just adding value by serving others. And I think especially for us in the church, that's obviously what we do all the time, but making it really important and really focusing on that as a leadership aspect, I think is huge. And I think this above many of the other things is what's going to propel you forward as a leader. Because when you're serving others and adding value to them, maybe often without getting paid, or maybe in ways you haven't been asked to, or that are over and above, that's really just going to move you forward in your career and in your ability to win people and influence people, and your ability to have a voice in what's going on, and people will recognize that. So the main points of that chapter were true leaders serve first. So kind of that Robert Greenleaf servant leadership model. You must intentionally add value. So this doesn't happen by accident. You don't accidentally help someone. So looking for intentional ways to be helpful. And that takes time often and resources. And then helping others, again, like I said, multiplies your influence. So here's 3 quick ways that you can do that. One is you can meet with a volunteer and ask how they're doing outside of Sunday. Whether you are a pastor title, or you're a creative director, or you're a graphic designer, there are volunteers or potential volunteers around you that you can be connecting with throughout the week. And I think that's important, one, to retain volunteers, but also to position yourself as a leader to that person and help them. Another way that you can help add value to people is kind of like what we talk about a lot, but creating processes that simplify things for people around you. So like create a cheat sheet or a guide for common tasks that people do on Sundays that volunteers do.
Make it so easy for your team to win.
Yes. Yeah. And that will mean so much to them. Like, wow, I don't even have to ask what I need to do because it's laid out here very clearly. Another way is to champion someone else's idea in a meeting or in Sunday planning. And this one can be tough, especially if you're an ideator. It's tough to and Luke's laughing because he knows this is probably.
We got two ideators on this call.
Yeah.
We're the guys in the meeting everybody hates. That. All right, stop with the ideas. Which one are we running?
Please stop.
Oh wait. There's one more thought though.
Yeah. But it's important to, especially as a leader, I like to think of the idea of like speaking last. Let other people get the ideas out, and then find intentionally ways that you can champion someone else's idea. Maybe help refine it and encourage it. That's going to go a really long way. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the law of addition.
I don't have a ton there. I mean, I think there's nothing greater than the chance to serve someone. And our space, that's what we do. We serve our community. And so that's just an honor of a lifetime. I think it has to be something you truly believe in, not necessarily something that you just sort of say that you believe in. I think people can read through that. Like, care is not something you can kind of, pardon the French, but BS your way through. You have to actually care. You actually have to have heart. You have to actually have empathy and love others and want their life to be better. But John Maxwell talks about in this book, if I'm not mistaken, and I can't wait to dig back into it, is there's something powerful when you learn how to lead volunteers first.
Yeah.
And then paid staff members, because paid staff members have to listen to you. They have to listen to you. They get their livelihood from you. And so It's really interesting just in the community that we serve. Most of us serve volunteers. They have no financial gain to have to listen to you. So that's a real mark of true leadership. So I can't wait to hear the stories. If you have read the book, let us know on socials. And if you haven't read it, obviously you can get all the details in the show notes.
Yeah. Definitely. We'll link to like an Amazon link or something in the show notes to this. But it's a great book. It's a great way to start if you're like, I haven't really thought about leadership or how I can grow my lid and influence people better. It's a great, I think, place to start. So I would encourage you to go read it. We talk a lot about SALT coming up here in October, but the day before SALT, October 7th, I want to tell you about the Worship Classic put on by Amplio Systems. It is going to be a super fun golfing event. It's totally free. So if you're coming to SALT, or if you're not planning on coming to SALT, you should still sign up for the Worship Classic and then come to SALT. Come golf with us. Come hang out. Amplio Systems is a great partner. They're a partner for this season of the podcast, and they are not just there to install gear at your church. They are leaders who've been in the trenches. They've all served in churches, and they know the pressure of Sundays and believe that your AV systems should support your ministry and not distract from it. That's why they work with churches from start to finish, designing future-proof, volunteer-friendly systems that help you and your people encounter Jesus each and every week. So if you want to learn more about the Worship Classic or Amplio Systems, go check out the links in the show notes. Luke, you've got a hot take.
I have a hot take. So when we started this whole season, we were like, we need to have some conversation starters, right? I think I said in one meeting, I was like, what if the podcast was like a spark to get you to think about something maybe a little bit differently? And I think all of this came to a head on one giant hot take in a staff meeting, and we're like, oh, this would be fun to kind of do on the podcast. So here's my hot take, just real quick. I think that you are, speaking of law of the lid, I think you are limiting yourself capacity-wise if you read your email, manage your email, compose your email on a browser. I'm just going to say it. Hopefully I haven't offended everybody. But some stats that ChatGPT has given me help me think that maybe I'm not that crazy, because apparently 80% of users either use Apple Mail or view email on a mobile app of some sort. So that's pretty encouraging. But JT, not to call you under the bus, but I know you, along with many team members of ours, use gmail.com as your primary source of email. And I just want to, maybe as a hot take and as a friend, because I care well about you, going back to servant leadership, this is going to be rough to get through. I care enough about you, JT, to feel like your capacity is maybe
that means a lot.
Maybe your capacity is limited by going to gmail.com. So
potentially. I use the app on my phone.
But you use the Gmail app, kind of.
Yeah, I use the Gmail app. Yeah, I'm a firm believer. I do not use the Apple Mail app. It's terrible. I don't like it.
So you can hate Apple Mail all you want, just like I hate Apple Maps, and we're going to offend everybody on this.
That would be a hot take.
Be great. Yeah,
which GPS app to use?
But the truth of the matter is, right, like I've done a little bit of research, and I've kind of come to understand there's a bunch of variety, right? Outlook and Mail are kind of the big ones. Either you're on a Microsoft Exchange, and so you've probably gone Apple. I'm sorry for all those out here that have to use Teams, and you're not allowed to use GChat or Slack or something. So I apologize for you. I'm praying for you
Yeah.
and in prayer over that for
Our
you.
condolences go out to you and your families.
Yeah, but there are some other ones, right? Spark is one that a lot of our team members use. Mailbird, Postbox, Superhuman. There's a ton of apps out there, but these are like desktop-based things. Here's just a couple things. Again, just to kind of blow this off, because I am a huge efficiency nut, especially when it comes to email. Listen, if you're using gmail.com, you don't have a unified inbox. So if you manage multiple emails, right? Let's say it's tech@firstbaptistchurch.com and it's jt@firstbaptistchurch.com and it's it at First Baptist, because I would be surprised if anybody listening to this only has one job. You may not only have one email address, right? Mm-hmm. On your gmail.com, you've got to constantly be changing tabs if you've got multiple emails. So there's inefficiency. You have very limited email templates or the ability to have custom filters and tags. I know gmail.com has some, but like I know in a lot of these apps, you can create rhythms. You can create a lot of these are now starting
Automations and
AI
stuff.
and automations. Yeah, you can have like all this sort of stuff, which, for me on the app that I use, which is a premium app, I do pay for it. Man, I get all these shortcuts and shortcodes that are extremely powerful. I know Gmail has some, but when you do a comparison of those two apps, it blows you away at like how fast I can like move through an app. But dude, I mean, you can't do offline email. Like if you've ever not had internet, you can't touch email because you've got to go to google.com or gmail.com, right?
Yeah.
You don't have teamwork tools.
When was the last time you were in the mountains trying to answer your email?
No, the last time was when I was on a Southwest flight and it wasn't free internet and I couldn't do my email. And so I was on my email program. And so the moment I landed, it all just magically sent.
That's funny.
So
the bougie in me is like, well, don't fly Southwest. You should probably fly Delta.
Well, listen, okay, that's not a hot take. You and I are on the same page there, but that would be a fun hot take. There's some people in our team that would totally fight us on Southwest.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just look at the recent news. That's all we got to say. So anyway, but in my opinion, I just think Gmail's slower. I think if you are not someone who really loves efficiency, gmail.com sounds great. But if you like efficiency,
you brought up an interesting point of like the automations and stuff. It's very cut and dry. Like, I feel like it's simple, but there's a lot of wanting in that department of like AI synapsis or reminding me of emails I haven't responded to recently or stuff like that. So,
well, and if you think about like integrations, right? Gmail.com has probably fantastic Google integrations with Google Calendar and GChat,
Docs,
and Google Meet, Docs, But I really would argue that some of these other tools out there probably have the ability, because they're third party, to have better integration with a WhatsApp, a Slack, iCloud, if that's kind of how you do your calendars, or Dropbox, Trello, Asana maybe. So I'll say this just as we wrap this up. So it'd be interesting to hear from people if they let us know, do you use gmail.com? Do you use an app?
Yeah.
We've done a real fun in researching this hot take. I put together kind of a table of like comparing some of the major applications to gmail.com. So you can go to our show notes. We'll give you that for free. Be a fun little download for you to
compare different email stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well,
speaking of online,
yes.
Right? You and I were both trying to get that transition. SALT conference at salt2025.com going online. We want to help you take that offline. Come to conference. Don't just get all your training online. Don't just grow your capacity in your lid online. But we've got a price increase coming up in a couple of days. So if you're listening to this when this airs, it is coming up. But this is a perfect time, regardless of when you're listening to this, to sort of remind you that today, not tomorrow, today is the best time to buy your ticket. And so I just want to say this out loud. If you've not come to SALT Conference, if you've felt yourself maybe in this conversation going, I would love to grow my influence. I'd love to grow my leadership. I'd love to grow my capacity. Or I want to get a little bit better. I want to fill my inspiration tank. That's what SALT Conference is all about. So come. If you're struggling to convince your boss, or maybe you've got some aspirations or hesitations on to sort of why you haven't purchased your ticket, would you just email us? Email us info@saltcommunity.com. We'll put that email address in the show notes, but tell us. We'd love to help. If it's a leadership thing, if it's elder board needs a little bit more concrete details as to the success of SALT or what the conference may get you and your church, let us know. We'd love to help. And I'll say this, if you listen to this after the price increase, why don't we give you a discount code? What's that discount code, JT?
Yeah, if you use the code Monochrome, you will get, is it $20? $20 off your ticket? Yeah. So, and that'll stack.
If you miss the price increase, that'll help. Yeah, exactly. We'll help you level it up. So anytime you're listening to this, use the code Monochrome, $20 off the ticket. We'd love to see you this fall, October 8th through 10th, salt2025.com.
Great. All right. Now, coming up, the moment we've all been waiting for. We're going to be hearing from Natalie Runion. She is a best-selling author of Raised to Stay. I believe she's got another book potentially coming out this year. Super excited about that. But we had her at conference last year, and her session was just incredible. It was so healing, talking about church hurt, how to navigate that. We had so many people who shared stories about, this bitterness they've been carrying for years and years and years, and finally being able to start kind of letting that go that night at conference. And so she's just got an incredible heart, incredible story. Super excited to hear from her. So without further ado, Natalie Runion.
I'm so excited to be sitting down with Natalie Runion here at SALT Conference. Natalie, hello, how are you?
I'm so good. Thanks for having me.
Man, it is an honor to have you here. And you and I were talking right before we hit record, and you mentioned something that I was like, wait, pause. Let's talk about that once we get in. So I want to talk about, obviously we're serving creatives who work in churches all over the nation in a variety of different disciplines, whether it's technology or communication or film design or web design, all of this. And I think in many ways, at least I can say for myself as someone who's a creative, I oftentimes fall into the what I call service provider role. Like I'm just a doer, I'm just a task manager. I just need to sort of execute the Christmas series or make this. And that at times kind of causes me to, miss what I think is a real calling for our community, and that is to shepherd people and to care for them well. You started going down that route. I want to open that up.
Well, creatives just as a whole, we really are empathetic, kind individuals who have soft hearts.
Yeah.
There are a few outliers who would fall in that more like taskmaster type of a creative. But really, the creatives that I've known my whole life, and I was a worship leader for 25 years and sat with many photographers and AV tech and sound technicians, really tender-hearted people who can get into taskmaster mode when they need to, but are some of the best listeners and some of the kindest people that I've ever met. And what I realize is we're hiding them away. We're hiding them in offices. We're hiding them behind sound booths. We're hiding them in the video technology areas. And really, we do that doing a disservice to them because then when they get burned out, then when things get really hard, there's no skin in the game with the people.
Yeah.
Right? There's no relationship because we've been hiding them away. And so what I hope to see from my own daughters who are very creative, who I could see serving the church in a creative way, are mothers and fathers in the faith who come out from their tech booths, from behind their sound booths and start saying, no, like we want to raise up this next generation of creatives.
I've told this story before to this community years ago, but this is such great timing that the whole reason I am where I am today is because a technical director chose to pastor me. Not, hey, let me teach you how a soundboard works or let me teach you how a lightboard works. What do you say to technical, creative, communications, film teams when you sort of sense like, hey, is there something missing in this opportunity to shepherd?
Yeah, I say look for your Lois and your Eunice. We hear Paul talking to Timothy about like his grandmother and his mother. And we forget that there's a generation under us and a generation above us who have something to offer, not just to us, but we have something to offer them.
Yeah.
And so when we find ourselves in the Sunday morning grind, that's maybe not the time to go look for somebody to shepherd. But during the week, as we're walking through the church, or we happen to stumble into the youth ministry or into kids ministry, or we go to like an older generation type of a gathering of a Bible study, and we start searching out for these people. And we say like, hey, I see something in you that we could really use. And we bring people in first with a task, and then we get to know them, and then it becomes a relationship. And then there's trust, there's equity. But that takes time. It takes resources, and it takes intentionality on our part to not be so task focused and start being more people focused.
Totally. And I think that in creative ministry, oftentimes there is downtime, and there's times to be able to maximize that opportunity to kind of just get to know someone, build that relationship slowly but surely, and use that to sort of ask good questions. This whole week, we've been talking about the way and the wonderment, and we've been talking about just this sort of comeback of curiosity. And I think this conversation is reminding me that it's also how do we become more curious about the people on our team?
Mm-hmm.
How do you see this living out in your ministry past?
Well, when I was a worship leader, I was the one that was like, put me in coach. Like I wanted to do all the things. I wanted to do VBS. I wanted to do the men's events, women's events, like wherever there was an opportunity, because I just loved hearing people worship. And so if it was 20 people or 200 people, I was like, I want to be there. And so VBS, for example, when we would do Vacation Bible School, I found myself with all of the high school worship leaders, college worship leaders, all of our sound guys, and we would have 2 or 3 hours where we would just be sitting in the in-between section. And so finally I got to the point where I'm like, wait a minute, we should be writing a song. Like we're sitting here, I've got this 12-year-old who is just helping as a junior camper. Like let's put her in a room with us and let her see how we write a song. Or if we had a kid that just happened to love video, I'm like, go shadow our friend over here who's got the big moving camera and watch how he does it. And really it's this modeling. It's throwing people into our everyday, not having to schedule more events, but saying, I value the fact that you're sitting here with me in this time. Let's not scroll on our phones. Like, let's go learn something.
Yeah. You're saying this and I'm thinking about even myself, like someone saw something in me and said, hey, I want to help train you in this way. And there's something that happens inside when someone else validates a gift for you. And there's something that happens when we get a chance to say, hey, you are important. You matter. Like when you just said, I want you in this room, or I want you to learn how to run this camera. That it's not your parents that's doing that. Like an outsider does that. What a great encouragement to the church.
And the church has to be collectively unified on this. Like multi-generational leadership has to be something that we're teaching from young all the way up to the very top. So that when one worship leader comes in and says, look, I think that we need to start raising up the next generation, or when another tech crew guy comes in or says, I've got this kid, it shouldn't be foreign to the group. It should be, okay, we actually have a plan for this. We have an internship. We have an opportunity. We have a summer program we can put them in. Yeah. And so I really just believe if we start thinking outside of the box and we start creating that unified front of, we don't want the legacy of this to die out with us. We want there to be a new generation that comes up better than us, that then we will start to see growth in our volunteer teams as well as in our staff teams and not have to headhunt from outside of our church walls.
Changing directions a little bit, you wrote a book called Raised to Stay, which kind of really like opened up opportunity after opportunity. It really resonated with people. Walk me through kind of the beginning days of that. Where did that message come from? How did that sort of get fostered up inside of you?
Well, I think a lot of us can identify with this idea that most of my life, worship had been my main thing. God is kind in that sometimes he lets us do what we love. And I had been hurt by the church when I was in high school. My dad was a pastor. And so when I got to college, it was a public college. Campus Crusade for Christ was on campus. And I started leading worship for them. It was in the late 90s, early 2000s when Passion was just getting started worship was this huge, vibrant thing. And I was so blessed that I got to step into new seasons of ministry through worship. And in my 40s, that suddenly was taken from me just out of nowhere. And that's an identity crisis, right? This thing that has been, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is all I do. To suddenly have that taken felt like God had bait and switched me. I just moved my family from Cincinnati to Colorado. I'm like trying to prove to everybody that I have finally earned my way to the top, and it's just taken. It's a barren season. I thought it was going to be a promised land. It's barren. And I was under a really unhealthy leader. And I can remember going on a walk with the Lord in 2019 and saying, look, I want to quit. Like, I feel like 40 years, 20 years pastor's kid, 20 years full-time ministry, like 40 is a holy number, like to tap out, right? Like, I just like to be a Starbucks barista.
Isn't that interesting how we can like find a reason to go, oh God, I see you're in
Look
that.
how holy I am. And I really felt him say, no, like, actually, I brought you all the way out here because I need you to do something else. And I just kind of felt this phrase. I didn't have a marketing team sitting with me or anything, just raised to stay, just settled in my spirit. And I felt peace around that. I felt like, wait, I think I must still be connected to the vine because even in this barren season, God's trusting me with something that I think is something. And I ran home and I wrote my first Instagram post. I had like 200 followers. And I wrote, the church did not hurt you. A few broken people did. Don't give up. You were raised to stay. And I just posted it. I was like, well, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to leave it there. And before I knew it, friends I had grown up in the church with my whole life who were not following Jesus, people that I knew had left the church, were sending me messages like, thanks for saying that. Like, can you like just, maybe write something else about that or whatever? And so every day I wrote a black box with white writing, trying to convince myself not to quit. And before I knew it, we had 200,000 stayers, who are like, yeah, church people are crazy, but I still love Jesus,
Yes.
And so, of course, through that, a publisher reached out and said, we'd like to publish a book around this. And that's how it all started, with just me trying to tell myself I couldn't quit.
So I want to recognize the fact that someone listening saying, man, I'm on the verge of burnout, or I'm under unhealthy leadership. Where do you help people discern the line of like, that is truly unhealthy or unbiblical leadership that you do need to move on versus no, stay, persevere, hang in there? Because there's got to be a fine balance there.
There is. And it's hard to tell people. It's like if somebody sat you down in a marriage and was like, I'm being abused, we wouldn't say, oh, you should go back to that. Like we would be like, well,
that's a problem. We need to walk.
Let's ask some questions and let's get some counseling. Yeah. And if it's dangerous, you cannot go back. And that's how I am with church people. I think that the church forgets that listening is a beautiful ministry. And so when someone comes to you and says, I've been hurt by the church or abused by a leader, the last thing we should be doing is defending the church. We really need to find out like what happened so we can help that person discern. And discernment's key here, not suspicion, but discernment, to be able to say, no, that really is abuse. If you've been sexually, physically abused, even spiritual abuse, in the sense that we're using scripture to validate poor behavior or abuse. And so we're able to help counsel each other through that. And so I tell people, if it's abuse and the clinical abuse, you don't stay. There's no trophies in heaven for staying in abusive situations. However, there are some just hard seasons. And I love that the Lord has given us discernment to be able to say, okay, this isn't fun. Like what was happening to me in Colorado wasn't fun. It was borderline narcissism. But the Lord had not put me in danger. I was not in danger. And I knew that he was teaching me something. And so an uncomfortable season is not abuse. And an uncomfortable season isn't always hurt. It's just not what I signed up for.
Yeah.
And so I think for all of us, we have to first do the inward work of saying, am I truly being abused? Am I in danger? And then get out if you are. And then if you aren't, but it's just a bad season, start asking the Lord, okay, Lord, give me an exit strategy. Like help me know, do I stay and contend for healthy culture or are you releasing me? Because sometimes we have to leave to stay. Sometimes we have to leave a church to stay with Jesus, and that's okay. There's freedom in that.
How do you think your faith changed in a season when you were just kind of really wrestling with, I don't want to be here. This isn't fun. I mean, I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm like, this affects the way that you see God. Because if you're like, he placed me here, right?
It was interesting because I remember crying in my kitchen and begging my husband to take us home in the first year. And he just looked at me and he said, Natalie, do you trust that the same Holy Spirit that speaks to you and me is speaking to the leadership of this church? And I said, I do actually. He said, then I think we have to figure out why God brought us here, because he's kind and he's good. He doesn't bait and switch us. So there's something kind in this if we can just get through the debris of what just felt like an earthquake in our lives. And it was true. What happened was, we're talking about wonder. Like I literally turned to wonder. Like, Lord, I wonder why you would bring me into this. I wonder. And then I think of Jesus on the cross. Like I wonder why God would allow him to go through this. And just like for the joy set before him, he stayed.
Because he did not.
He did not. He was like, if this cup could pass for me.
Please take it.
He's like crying blood. He's sweating blood. And I think about Jesus on that cross and I just think, man, what felt like a crucifixion was the start of a resurrection. And for me, I had to believe that if God is kind, if I believe everything about what the Bible says about who God is, and he doesn't change, he's not like the shifting shadows, every good and perfect gift comes from him, then I have to trust that what feels like it's going to kill me is actually the start of something new. And that's exactly what that season was, it was an introduction for me of a God who I can wrestle with, and I can get angry with, and I can say, I feel like you bait and switched me. And I told him that on many occasions. And to learn that if I'll just stay there in that fire, that there's a refinement that is coming. And so Raised to Stay was birthed out of ash. I mean, it was birthed out of anger and frustration. But that's when he talks about making all things new, and that he'll bring out the beauty out of the ashes. Like that's what we're seeing now 5 years later.
And I've got to imagine on the backside of that, you and your husband are like, wow, we got to see God do a miracle in this, right? Because you know, you're probably when you're willing to kind of throw in the towel and go, this isn't fun, I want out. It's on your terms. It's not on God's terms. But when you stick in, you get to give God the glory in a way that no one else can take credit for, right?
It's true. And he gives you a holy chutzpah that you did not expect. Like when I got worship taken from me and was put into women's ministry, my first thought was, I don't even like women. Like, why are you like, What did I do to anger the gods? Like, why am I in this? But what was so cool about it is he taught me how to fall in love with his daughters. And it was in that I began to be shepherded through the spiritual mothers that I had not been paying much attention to because I was hidden away in my worship corner. And I got to sit in hospital rooms and witness miracle upon miracle and tragedy and sit with people in their lowest point. And my heart began to break for the church, not as a creative, not as a worship leader, but as a shepherd. And I think when we hide away as creatives, we're really not allowing ourselves to have our hearts broken for the things that break the Father's heart. And then when I did think about quitting, I was like, I can't leave these people. Like, things are really hard, but I can't imagine leaving them without a shepherd, without a women's pastor. Like, they've already been through so much. And so then suddenly the shifting went from what's best for me to what's best for God's church. And it was in that woman was fired. That was all taken care of. And now here I am in this position that I didn't ask for, but God is blessing.
Yeah. That's so, so good. Natalie, thank you for stepping into that story. For trusting God. And I just love being on this side of it. Obviously, the story's not probably done. But you're getting a chance to encourage men and women all across the nation to say, hey, let's reevaluate who you're staying for.
Yes.
And I just so applaud that. Thank you for that. And thank you for being here.
It's an honor. Thank you.
What an incredible conversation with Natalie. I hope that sparked in you some new vision and aspirations and hope, and kind of created some healing and thoughts. So we encourage you to check out either her session from last year on Salt U, or she's coming back this year to Salt 2025, which we've already talked about. But so if you want to hear more from her, get her book, meet her, get her to sign, the book that you buy, come to Salt. You'll get to chat with her and connect with her on some level. So we're excited about that. If you want to learn anything about any of the products or books that we've mentioned, or the free PDF that we're creating for the email comparisons, or about our sponsor, Amplio Systems, and the Worship Classic, go click the link in the show notes. It'll all be linked down there with descriptions and stuff, as well if you want to buy tickets to Salt 2025. If you've been listening,
by the way,
if this is your first...
Let me just interject real quick, JT, on this Amplio thing, because when we were talking with them, I joked that I don't play great golf, but I dress like I play great golf. And they said I'm still welcome. So whether you play golf or not, you're still welcome
even
to
if you're
the classic.
Terrible. Yeah. Yes. Luke wears a Masters shirt 4 out of 5 days a week. So
questionable. Maybe 2 out of 5 days. But yeah.
So go check them out. If you've been listening to the podcast for a while and you found it valuable, thank you. Go and drop us a 5-star review. It's super helpful. It helps us get the podcast out there to other people. And then just share the link with a friend. If what Natalie said today stuck out to you, drop a link in a text chat to a friend right now and let them know it was impactful. That's helpful for us. We're trying to grow this, and we're excited about what we get to do here. So that's super helpful for us. And then don't forget, next week we are hearing from the Salt Worship team. So they are a team of really talented, incredible worship leaders and people that we pulled together last year, and many of them are coming back again in 2025, so you won't want to miss that. Thank you again so much, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.